Okay, so welcome everyone. We're here to chat about reconnecting with the trail, whether that's post-motherhood. We're also going to come to that in terms of post-injury, post-hiatus, whatever that means for you and where you're currently at. And we're excited to have some lovely ladies in here and Coach Beck. I'll give you a very quick intro to me. You may have heard from me in the emails back and forth a little bit, or seen me in the groups posting, but I do some of the operation stuff for Her Trails, but I've also done many of the programs, and so have fallen in love with the holistic kind of training approach, which particularly guided me through new motherhood. I have a 4-year-old and a almost 2-year-old, so when I first did the program, it was definitely the thing that helped me fall back in love with trail running, because it was the first time I was able to be holistic around my training and actually sustain my training and not just blow myself apart, which is particularly important with little ones. Yeah, so how about you, Beck? You want to give us a little intro?
We couldn't survive without you, Lizzie. So
thank you.
As most of you know, I'm Coach Beck. You probably have a love-hate relationship with me from the programming and the strength training sessions that I deliver. You're welcome. I also have a 5-year-old and returning to run when he was younger was tough for me, just because I felt like I had a new body. It was a new experience. So I had to kind of relearn who I was and what I needed during that time. And we'll go into specifics later. But he's now 5 and he's Coach Bo. So now I'm learning how to survive the mama's guilt, like Katie was saying before, of like leaving the house to get to go out for my run and go out on trails and do the adventurous things that I love. So I make time for that. I wear many different hats as a business owner, a coach, and a mother. So you have to learn how to create a good structure. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. I think because it's a small group, we should introduce ourselves.
Definitely. If you can.
Would you like to go next, Bianca?
Sure, I'll go first. So I'm Bianca. I am a mother of 2 girls, 7 and 3. I have been dabbling in running and other kind of sports most of my life, but started on the Her Trails journey, I guess, in the first 21.1 program. I did that and then decided to do the UTA. So signed up for the 100-kilometer program, even though I was signed up for the 50k UTA, which was postponed. So I completed the 20-week program of that and have taken both a physical and mental break since then, and have just started back up. So week 3 of round 2. So I'm currently have a registration for both the UTA in Katoomba and the one in Kosciuszko at the end of the year. And yeah, so running for me is really about doing something for myself, which was really hard after having kids, to carve out the time to do something for me, because I don't work full time, so I felt like a lot of myself was being given to other people, and also something that I felt was really efficient with time. So it was something I could do from my doorstep. I didn't require 3 or 4 hours of the day. I could do it when I wanted to. So running has become, I didn't realize all of those benefits before becoming a mother, how advantageous running would be for my life. But yeah, it is a juggle. Definitely doing the longer program, the amount of time it requires, especially on weekends and stuff when you're juggling other things, has been, I found that a real challenge. So I'm definitely looking forward to some insight as to how I can do that and also escape the mum guilt, because I totally feel that as well.
Understand. Welcome. Katie, you're up.
I'm Katie. I really only started running when I hit 40 as something that was going to be, nearly 40, I should do something. I'd never really done much in the way of exercise my whole life before that. But I quickly fell in love with running, and in a way that I'd never liked anything else I'd tried before. And I think it was more from a psychological perspective, just being out there, particularly being on the trails. And there's a lot of trails near my house, which I'm very lucky to have. Just being in nature, it just completely changes me. So I've sort of stayed with that for the last 5 years on and off. And unfortunately, I've got a few bits of my body that play up from time to time, but that's okay. I think the strength really helps with that. I've got 2 kids, an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, and work a lot in a really stressful kind of job looking after other people. So I guess fitting everything in is always a big juggle for me, because some of the work now has to come home in my private practice because I can't fit it in the day anymore. So between all of that and, I feel a lot of time pressure and pressure to spend time with the kids, though my husband's fabulous and he's always supporting me in getting out, and he understands how valuable the running is for me, mentally and physically. So any tips to, I guess, work things in with time management and guilt management and all of that would be very valuable.
Awesome. So good. And look at you. You're at work right now on the Zoom.
I'm at work.
And Natasha.
Hey, so I'm Natasha or Tash. So I, similar to Katie's story, I was never really into sort of organised sport growing up, and I certainly was not a runner. I was definitely a reluctant runner. Long story short, I started getting into it last year at the bequest of my work colleagues. They dragged me out, and I secretly discovered that I actually really enjoyed running. I love being on the trails, connecting with nature. I work in IT, so I'm in front of a screen all the time. And whilst, I really love my job, it's so lovely just to get back outside. I moved to Queensland earlier this year, so where I used to live last year, I had access to a lot of trails nearby, and I don't have quite that same connection at the moment. So I've been doing a lot of pavement pounding, as they say lately, but when I do get to the trails, I really appreciate it when I get there, so that's been great. This is I started on her trails, I think, at the start of lockdown about a year ago I think it was the second cohort of the 21.1, and it was an absolute lifesaver. It gave me structure, it gave me something to focus on other than the fact that I was locked into, a 5K radius of my house, and it was brilliant, and really got sort of hooked and definitely, I think I probably can call myself a runner now after doing that. I signed up for UTA 50, and of course the race got postponed, and I've got to say I was secretly relieved, because at the end of that 20 weeks, we were in the process of moving into our house up here, and it was just a lot. And as I said at the beginning of this call, I don't understand how you guys manage when you do have small humans to look after as well, because it's a lot. It's taxing, right? Staying on top of nutrition, being organized, recovering, fitting life in. It's a huge commitment, and I think it's worth it. But love to hear some tips and understand, I guess, how do you optimize and figure out what are the things you should really make sure you prioritize versus things that are maybe less important, if that's part of the kit to fit it all in. So yes, while I don't suffer from the mum guilt, I can absolutely appreciate how tough that must be on top of everything else. So yeah, and I've got the Guzzler up here in Brisbane in a few weeks. I'm doing the 21. I downgraded from the 50 to the 21. So that will be my first ever organised official running race of any kind in my entire life. So I'm very much looking forward to that. So cross fingers.
So good, Natasha. Thanks, Tash. You have been a loyal member and we've loved having you from our second cohort.
Yeah, it's been a fun time. I love the community, so it's really great.
Hi, Claire. You made it.
Sorry.
You're great. You're in. Welcome. We're just doing a little intro. Yeah, before we get into it.
Sure. Am I just saying about myself and running?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah. And your new little human.
Sure. So I'm Claire. Nice to be here with everyone. I have Lizzie's one of my nearest and dearest old friends, not near anymore, but very dear friend. So it's interesting. This is my first Her Trails experience. And it sort of started off as, go support my friend. And I'm doing it with another girlfriend, Sammy, who is moving to Queensland. So we thought, it'd be a nice way to keep in touch. But it quickly became me carving out this little bit of space and time for myself. So I've got two small little girls. I've got Vivian's 4 months, so she's super little, and then Juniper is 3. So I'm pretty busy, but I'm pretty stoked. But I'm very stoked actually, not pretty stoked. I'm very stoked. I first got into running trail running in particular, as a way of training to do Kokoda. So I thought, if I do that before, I trained for an event, the half marathon in Forest in Victoria, which was really fun. But I've always been, I'm not a runner, and Lizzie and I have had this conversation so many times. I've always had a pretty active lifestyle, but I'm not a runner. And my husband is a beautiful runner, so I used to go to all the trail running events with him. And I remember going to the Razorback and seeing him come back from that run up Feathertop, and he was just stoked and high on life. And I just remember thinking, I think I want in. That looks really great. So it's sort of all naturally progressed from there. But yeah, I'm just sort of finding my feet again and rebuilding strength, and just navigating this 2 kids and exercise. So yeah, that's kind of me. Is that my intro? Is that all right?
Awesome. Great. Welcome. Okay, that's everyone. So what we wanted to kind of go into firstly, I guess as you have all introed, there's so many facets to our lives, and as mums, we've got work, we've all got really busy schedules, and so something that comes up for everyone is managing to find that structure in the schedule and carving out time for ourselves, which is one of our big focus points at Her Trails, is how we do that. And that's something we really want every woman to be able to feel powerful in doing, for their trail running, but also for self-care and life in general. So what we wanted to chat about is kind of the different ways in terms of when we're coming back to the trails and reconnecting with the trails. Not the easiest, but the first thing we can talk about is that physical change as we come back. So, who hands up if you've done or had a look at the pelvic floor videos that are in the Life Hub as an example of that? Yeah. Beck. How did everyone find them? Was that something different for you, or?
Yeah, I'd never really done anything like that with regards to a running, specifically for running. It had been, I guess guided through other styles of exercise, like through yoga or particularly postnatally, but not specifically for running.
Yeah.
it's a with pelvic floor, I find that it's a constant work on is one of the things I like to say. It's like, so the pelvic floor from having a baby, it's like, you know, then you have a second baby, or you returning to running after not running for a while. It's something that you should always work on, especially when you start developing like the breath work with your pelvic floor work. As you'll notice, like within our strength sessions, it's like we try to mix it with the breath work and this like stability and core, but this is like it should be a completely different session as you're returning to the run, especially if it's post baby.
Yeah, and I think something we learn about is contracting the pelvic floor and doing Kegels and squeezing. And, you know, when you're at the traffic lights, do your Kegel work, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And often what's not talked about is learning to relax the pelvic floor, learning to combine that with the breath, which I love Julie's videos because she actually breaks that down in how the diaphragm works with the pelvic floor, which is critical in getting the strengthening in the practice so that when you do start running, that's a natural pattern that's there, which I think I definitely noticed the difference in connecting it with the breath. So if you haven't jumped and gone through those, whether you've got kids or not, it's an amazing tool for every woman to learn that connection with breath and pelvic floor, and also learning to relax the pelvic floor, which I think is a big issue for a lot of us too, not just the strength.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But also in terms of physical body, we have things like our sleep, we have recovery, we have nutrition. Sleep is something that I'm sure we probably can all relate to in a lack of sleep. I mean, Beck, when you had a new baby, or even in your life now, how do you go about prioritizing that, or what's your kind of?
So yeah, I think it's different in different chapters of your life, and people on this call and within our community, they're all at a different stage. But I specifically remember when Bo was born, how hard it was getting those 90-minute sleeps. And if you have children, you remember that time, unless your hormones have taught you to forget. But very hard when you're not going into those deep REM sleep cycles, which means on a scientific basis, like you're not actually recovering. And sleep is the only way that the body truly recovers. It's the only way that we completely shut off and let the body recover to the stresses mentally and physically within our lives. And that's when our organs also do their nice things too. But during that time, you kind of you're running off that kind of like the adrenaline and that like first mum. You don't actually notice it, but you're like that busy mum syndrome where you're not getting enough sleep, but you're actually like telling everyone that you're fine. So for me, I had to ask for help during that time. I had to be like, can you help me? Like my mom or my family would help me to actually have a nap during the day, or get some more sleep, like blocks quality sleep time. So get it like a 5-hour or 6-hour block, which was like heaven. And then you fast forward to today, my 5-year-old still wakes up in the night, and then you have work, and then you have everything else, travel that goes in with your schedule. And I prioritize that by going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time every night. And that doesn't always go to plan, but I do make it a priority. Like it's up that, top 3 priorities.
Yeah. And it's, and like, I think no matter what season we're all in, sleep is something that is just not easy to prioritize. I don't know if I could manage going to bed at the same time every night. That's an amazing exercise to practice. Like,
I actually read this book. It's called Why You Sleep. And the studies within that book said that it's more important to go to bed at the same time every night than it is to wake up at the same time every morning. So once I read that, and I was like, okay, I can do that. I can like have my set schedule. But yeah, it doesn't always go to plan. Don't get me wrong.
No, it's awesome. And I think so many things, Beck and I were chatting before this. I've had some like PT clients in the past who are new mums, and they'll often come in and be like, I'm getting so much sleep. Like if I add up all the hours I'm getting, it's easily 8 to 10 hours, and I'm only waking up 3 or 4 times a night, and I'm, blocking the sleep. And you can just tell looking at this woman how exhausted she is. And it's so easy to look back on that time and think that it's really good when we're in it, even though the broken sleep, like as Beck said, your hormones protect you from that a lot of the time. So it's being able to acknowledge where, and whether we're waking up from little kids or not. Sometimes we're waking up from other things, or struggling to fall asleep at night with work and potentially screens and all of these other elements that come in. It's being able to look at that and go, where am I really at? And I think what we learn, the skills that we learn early when we have new babies, are also the skills that carry us into motherhood. That's something I found even 4 years later, going, well, I'm still kind of doing the same patterns that I might have done when I had newborns, because we get really good at adding another thing, and adding another thing, and then adding another kid. And we just keep going on this autopilot of like mum's skills of multitasking and just continuing to add to the schedule. And I think we get really good at fitting more and more and more and more in. But when we have a run program that forces us to be holistic and actually recover, then things can start to crop up. Like for you, Beck, if you've had some high level performance and high level programs during even that time when you've had FO, what starts to flare up for you, or what do you notice when you aren't getting that recovery and that self-care and that time to sleep, I guess, and that downtime?
Yeah, everything.
Or with your athletes, yeah.
Execute your sessions the way that you like. So for me, my expectations of what I thought I could do were just completely different to what was actually happening, because I wasn't getting the full recovery within my sleep cycle. So and with athletes, I see this all the time. Unfortunately, it's just kind of like we have that mentality where we're like, oh yeah, no, we can survive. It's 4 hours. I'll catch it up. But you can't actually catch up that sleep. So if you're not recovering, then the body is going to start to break down. And you can, do strength and you can keep adding load, but your body will at some point break. And that causes injuries. So sleep is very high up on the priority list, and it should be for everyone listening, because you won't get out the same things if you don't have sleep within the program.
And if you don't have enough sleep, which is inevitable for many of us at many points, what are the priorities? What would you say? How can you adjust your training to accommodate that?
Yeah, I think I would start with like making sure that if you have in a different chapter, so if you have a newborn or you have a child that is needing to sleep, get a sleep coach for them. Like, because the reality is if your baby's not sleeping, then you're probably not sleeping. Or try different methods within yourself to like make sure that you're both getting rest if you can. But if you're not getting that much sleep, like check in with yourself. So if you know that you need 6 hours of sleep to function, to get the most out of a session, and you only got 4, you want to make sure that you go, okay, I reality check here. I got 4 hours sleep last night. On my program today, I have a speed session that involves like the high-end intervals. Well, I don't know if I can get that out in me today. I would make sure that I eat, so you nourish your body. So make sure you're fueling before you go out for the session. And if you do your warm up and you're not feeling like you're going to get that speed session in, change it to a base mile run. So we have to, if we're not getting enough sleep, enough quality sleep, we need to like manipulate the day and change the day. And then make sure that you go to bed at that same time every night, or try and actually bank some sleep the next night so then you can execute a harder session. But in short, you want to make sure that you just reduce the load that you're going to put on your body, because you're already starting under stress if you don't have enough sleep.
Yeah. And even looking at those sessions, like a strength session might feel more achievable than a high intensity run, or mobility, you know, still carving out that time so you get the time for yourself to flow through just some movement that's manageable.
Yeah, but you're just lowering your expectations of that session, and adjusting to how you feel. Like I feel like we need to really be in tune with our body and be okay with the fact that we might not get that top end speed out or hard session.
Yeah. Any questions on that? Like that for the physical in terms of returning to the trail for any of you? Like, is there anything that jumps up in terms of the body coming back or where you're at now?
Am I interrupting someone?
Nope. You're good.
So, I mean, I generally feel pretty strong, but I don't currently. So I'm aware that I'm building back up, but I don't know what my question was. Mum brain really is a real thing, isn't it?
Forever.
All right. Just in terms of you know, I haven't really, aside from like a little bit of stuff like that, I haven't really been doing much strength stuff until now. It's only 4 months, so that's probably pretty understandable. In terms of running, I'm finding myself, even in the base runs, getting a little bit excited and starting to get a bit more, I don't know, faster than maybe I should be. Is it, you know, how important is it that I pull back on those sort of base mile sessions up strength, I guess? Like, how much do you pull back and how much do you?
So,
I don't know, what's the balance? How do you find the balance?
So it was broken up a little bit there, but I think the question was, how do you find the balance when going too hard in the base mile run?
Yeah.
Claire, this happens all the time, especially if you're feeling good that day. You tend to try and go. People often go hard, especially within the her community. So don't worry, you're not alone. But what you want, like the way that we design our programs is to make sure that you keep your easy days easy and your hard days hard. So the reason why we want you to really lower that intensity down to a level 3 is so you can you're building a different system. So you're building your aerobic system. So think of it, it's in the name of base, you're building a base. If you think of it like that, it means that you can go harder the next day. It's almost like a gift to your body. So maybe in these runs, you might be able to like think of an intention or think about your form or do something a little bit more, like I find them very meditative, like with my base mile runs, because I'm going easy. I get to think about whatever I want to think about within that run to slower that intensity down. And then I know the next day, this is in the program to help me get ready for the speed run. So it's designed so you can go a little bit harder the next day.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, cool.
And with those levels that Beck's talking about, like 3 is like this one step up from walking, and I have to keep reminding myself of that with every single base run. Like, could I actually tell a story while I'm running? And it's been a huge area for me of improvement. I think it's the cause of all of my blow-ups in my whole past with running, because it's so much easier than a lot of us are used to working at. And I think it's a huge shift if you can give yourself that permission to back it right off. I've actually taken pace off my watch for those runs, and I just use timer, because if I look at pace, it's like creeps back up again.
That's a good tip. That's a good tip.
Yeah. Just enjoy them, because the program will build and you'll be looking forward to those.
100%.
Like there's people on this call that would vouch for that.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. And also, Claire, just on that, you do have a 4-month-old as well. So you really want to make sure, even though your mind is like ready to go and your body feels ready, like within the energy levels, your body will take a little bit. It does take some time to rebuild that strength. So I take those easy runs as those foundation runs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Just shift the mental side of that on, like, I'm building my foundation here. I'm building back up to being a stronger runner.
Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to add, being on the other end of the spectrum, just being with kids that are a little bit older. I mean, I still have, unlike you, Beck, my children still appear at my bedside in the middle of the night randomly, and I have to take them back, and you never know why. But I feel like, you know, since my kids have got a little bit older, I have been blessed with some pretty deep sleeps. I've noticed that anything that I've actually learned probably from being a mother is my ability to fall asleep pretty quickly and to stay asleep pretty well. But one thing I noticed with the Her Trials program, is specifically with the 50K program, was that the program actually became like my third child. So I was actually having to get up earlier and earlier to complete the training, to get home in time to do all the other mum duties, like, you know, get the kids ready for school and whatnot. So the longer that the sessions became, the earlier and earlier I would have to get up in order to complete them on time. And my husband was also training for UTA. So it might be on any one morning, we both were trying to fit in an hour-long run and be home in time for breakfast. So it was getting quite a push. So my sleep was not really being so much impacted by my kids, but it was really being impacted by fitting in the training in time for the kids. And I never knew really when to, like, I guess what you were talking about, you know, when to prioritize, when to wake up one morning and go, actually, you know, today's not it, I'm not feeling like that. Because every morning I would wake up feeling like dragging myself out of bed, feeling, oh my God, I don't feel like I've had enough sleep. But then once I started running, you know, generally it got a little bit better. So it's kind of like that morning fog brain of being like, the alarm goes off and you swear, I only just went to sleep. But I could see that cumulatively over the 20 weeks, it definitely started to add up to the point that probably by week 16, 17, I was actually suffering from quite a few injuries. And it is that not really trying to tap in to my body as much as the program, to kind of say, like, the program says this, what does my body say? And actually know what the feeders are, what the receptors are on my body that I really should be listening to, and what is, it's, you know, it's 4:30 in the morning, and anyone would feel like this at 4:30 in the morning. So I guess that's probably where I'm still feel like I kind of thought this round in UTA 2.0 that I would try to listen to my body a little bit more, but I'm still not really sure of how to do that. And I'm also not really sure of what I'm supposed to be listening for, because I know that by the time I got an injury, that was too late. You know, that kind of meant that I had several weeks out, and I found it really hard to catch up both mentally and physically. So I'm this time kind of promised myself that I would pay more attention, but I'm still not sure what I should be looking for, what I should be listening for.
So what you should be listening for is you should start a diary, because you want to start a diary to see how many hours of sleep you're clocking. But what you want to listen for is more throughout the day. So if you wake up at 4:30 in the morning and you're like, because everyone's going to feel like that, it's 4:30 in the morning. You're like, oh my gosh, it's early. And then you get up and like you said, you start running. If you start running and you feel like by the end of the 10 to 15 minute warm up, you're okay and you can deliver that session, you come home and then you eat within that 30-minute window of finishing the session, and then you're not exhausted by the end of that night, and you go to bed at that reasonable time, like that's where you know it's like, it's not only during the session, it's more how your day pans out, because a lot of women go through the day and they don't eat enough to facilitate the training load that they're going through, especially when you're getting into that week 14 all the way to week 17 within your program. Is beautiful. It's such a nice little block of time that you guys are enduring there, but it's a lot on the body. And if you feeling tired, you have low energy, and then you do it again the next day, and the next day, it does accumulate. So you're feeling tired across the board, but you're not actually checking in with yourself to see if is this like an 8 out of 10 tired, or is this a 5 out of 10 tired? So going back to the diary, like write a diary and be like, I had 6 hours of sleep. I went to bed at this time. I woke up at 4:30. I did a hard session. My energy out of 10, 1 out of 10 is a really good way to just write a little note. It doesn't take that long. You can write it in your notes in your phone if you don't have a handwritten diary. And then you can start writing down what you eat if you're that type of person. But the most important part is at the end of the day, how did I feel? How did I feel at 3 to 4 p.m. and how did I feel by 7? Like, am I absolutely exhausted and then I'm doing this all again tomorrow? Or was I feeling good? So it's not just within the session.
And I think to add to that, how we're feeling, energy level, really important. And also other things can come up. Like for me, irritability is like my red flag. Like I could rate my irritability from 0 to 10. And that's my, like, yeah, it's my little feather going, listen, if I start getting snappy or frustrated or angry or hangry.
Hangry. Because I was just showing you my diary. Like I write it down. That's been my lesson. I write down my key sessions. I even have like a little list. I'm useless at drinking enough water. Like hydration's been my lesson as well after doing it. I don't know, Bianca, how you found that, but like eating enough and staying hydrated properly were huge things for me. And when I didn't do it, I really noticed it. So I write it down. I have my little list of drink 2 liters of water, do your mobility, do the strength. This week was shit. So, and I found that really helped as well.
Being okay if it's a rest day. And knowing that like doing 80% of the program is so good. You're going to whatever race you're doing, whether it's 21, 10 or 50 or 100, like 80% of the program is excellent. I'm not saying that to miss sessions, but I'm just saying like having a day off so you can perform better is smart. That's smart training. So don't be afraid to take a day off.
That's a great segue into, we put together some tips in getting back physically and emotionally, reconnecting with the trail, where no matter what you're reconnecting from. So we'll go into those because they give some really nice pieces of information, of tidbits. But what I wanted to say before we go into those points is don't worry, Bianca, that you feel like you don't know how to tune into your body, because I think that's a huge thing we hear a lot of right now too, especially in like the nutrition world. Like tune into your body and your body will know intuitively what to do. But I think for so many of us, especially as mums, we're so disconnected from that, because it's like we've just been able to cram more and more and more in. And I mean, I'm on that same journey too, where it's like, what is my body actually telling me and how do I listen? And I think we have to sometimes be really systematic about it at the start.
Yeah.
Could I ask a little question, Liz? Just am I clear? Is that clear?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
So just in terms of, I was just thinking before when Tash was talking about hydration. So I try. But just in terms of breastfeeding and training, like, you know, there's a lot of me at the moment that I feel like, you know, I'm feeding and it's like just pretty, like I'm sleeping okay, but I'm giving a lot of myself. And training to me is, you know, that time back for myself that I really enjoy. But, you know, I do find it hard to tune in with, you know, I mean, tuning in with my intuition in terms of that, because it's that extra bit that you're giving. So finding that balance there. Just wondering your thoughts on that, Beck and Liz, and anyone else that might know more than me.
So, like, when you're breastfeeding, things are different for hydration. So you actually do need more because you're the production. So they say it's actually 16 cups per day. So I think in this, I think in this situation, it's more of a, okay, I know that I need more than the average person. So to carry a drink bottle around with you, go to bed with a drink bottle, like make sure that you have a drink bottle with you so you can achieve that. So I would say that knowledge would really help you there, of just knowing that it's a lot of water to consume within a day for what you're doing, especially when you're physical exercise on top of breastfeeding. And then environment also plays a part there too. So if you're in a hotter environment or a cooler environment, you obviously need a little bit more water. So, and replacing your electrolytes would also help with that too.
And being kind. I mean, we're going to go through these points too, but there's no hurry, you know, like you said, for the 10K to be your solo time and your self-care is amazing. But like Beck was saying, if you get 4 hours of sleep or broken sleep and you're breastfeeding, I mean, that affects you psychologically as well when you're away, and physically, you know. I remember breastfeeding being a real, like, I was always thinking of like when I had to get back to feed, and like there's that whole tie there too. But kindness, you know, even if you get out and you're not feeling it and you're a bit flat, just getting the movement in, getting out and taking it really easy, particularly those base run questions. Like, there's so much going on hormonally as well.
Yeah, definitely. So should we go through these? Lizzie and I planned tips to help you return to the trail. So number one is all about communicating. So asking for help when you need it. There's a few examples for the crowd that we have, but I'll just use one. It's like, hey, like I have this program. It's just like telling your loved ones that you have a program, and if they have one too, like Bianca's husband, it's like trying to communicate and plan and structure out when you can both have support. But yeah, communication is number one.
Awesome. Number two, which comes in connection with number one, acknowledging or admitting the overwhelm or your need for support. And I think as mums and as women, it's really hard often for us to firstly acknowledge when we're sinking or when we're feeling completely, overloaded. So those two tie together really nicely, is being able to go, I need some help, and then who can I communicate with and who can I ask for support?
And number three is setting boundaries. So it sounds a little bit harsh, but setting boundaries is just like allowing you that time. So for me, it's like setting boundaries to help me get out the door to the trail. So it might be like, okay, it might be a sleep time if you have that luxury of going to bed at the same time every night. Boundaries might be, you know, I need to look after my health, so I'm going to start that diary. And learn about my body. And other things can be, you know, what you eat and when you eat, and then what you say yes to and what you say no to, because we often find it really hard as women and as mothers to say no to things, especially when it's with your kids or for your kids. Yeah, so that's boundary setting is huge.
From a real schedule perspective, we've recently been doing this, which the training kind of helped me a lot, was to say this is what I need on my weekly schedule. And these are my windows, and my husband has his windows, and we have our family time windows. And if I wake up and it's my morning window for a couple hours or my training and I'm not feeling it, it's still my window. And that time is my solo time. And it might be when I leave the house and go for a coffee. It might be when I choose to sleep in. It might be when I get my run in. And that ties nicely into boundaries too, because it's taken a little while to get that flowing, but now that it's flowing, it's so valuable and it's so protected for each of us. And it's a way to take away having that constant conversation all the time of like, when am I going to fit this in? When are you going to do yours? This. It's like, we already know, we don't have to even take the time to discuss it. So that could be a helpful thing for you. It's been life-changing for me. And I don't feel guilty taking my time because it's pre-discussed and pre-scheduled. And it's been really awesome. Yeah, work in progress. But yeah, it's been great. So number 4 is revamping your routines, which we often, if we connect that back to the new mum, we're so focused on routines often for babies and sleeping and napping and doing this. So, you know, can we flip the mirror onto ourselves and look at what are we creating as routines for ourselves for looking after our health? Beck already mentioned about sleeping and sleep times. But it ties into the next point, which is also around your food, your meal prepping, and considering that as a form of self-care and as a routine. Do you want to touch on that one quickly, Beck?
Yeah, so 5 is eat enough food at the right times is like the second thing, because I think Lizzie and I were talking about this before we jumped on the phone, and a couple of you have mentioned, like, you go out for your training session and then you rush back to the kids and you tend to forget about yourself. So the most important times to eat is in the morning, and that's when we often forget. So we want to front load our carbohydrates and our proteins and our good fats and design our plates early to make sure that we don't have a low energy deficit at the end of the day. So if you do your exercise and then you come back and you forget to eat, that's detrimental in your training and your health, and you can't be that support system for other people when you have that less energy. So make sure that you eat enough food. And if you need more educational tips on this, we have Thea, who is amazing. She has a lot of Life Hub videos on our site, so please click into them, especially the one where it's design your plate, because it'll take you through what you need to eat in one setting. But a good rule of thumb there is make sure you eat before your session, and then make sure you eat within 30 minutes after your session. Okay. And
tying that back into, tying that back into what Bianca was saying around like tuning into the body. A lot of us have very warped views of how much food is enough food, because we've come from a lot of time of being told a certain number of calories or certain things to avoid, or we've come from a real often like, what do we cut out, what are we cutting out, what are we avoiding, rather than are we getting enough food to support the stresses in our lives, the movement that we're doing, you know. And as we add more things, whether that's kids or not, I almost think of it like, am I eating enough to support the stresses that I've added? You know, when you're particularly stressed, you got a lot going on at work, you're not sleeping enough, you got a lot going on with the kids. That's when you need to be eating more good stuff, more nutrient dense foods, you know, the more amazing foods that are going to give back to you. But that's often when we tend to go, oh, more coffees. more quick stuff on the run, but that's depleting. So I think motherhood is a really interesting depletion for years problem. And I think many of us never really build that back because we're so depleted for so long. I know when I had my second baby, that was really evident because it was like I was already coming from a depleted state and then putting myself through that again, and you realize you just like get hammered down again. So eating enough food is a huge focus for us. And yeah, Thea's videos are amazing for that, on just quick ways you can make sure you've got lots on hand that's going to support you, and meal prepping as a tool, as a self-care tool.
Sure.
Next one, start slowly and adjust your expectations. You probably have all felt this, but particularly coming back after kids, it's really easy to go in all guns blazing and want to be right where you were when you left off. But I think, yeah, it's like I said to Claire, there is no rush. I thought when I was 6 months postpartum that I was back to normal. And then at 12 months, I looked back again, I was like, there's no way I was back to normal at 6 months. Now I'm feeling a bit better. Then at 2 years, it was like, oh, now I'm starting to get there. So I think, yeah, if you go in knowing that, then it's a little bit kinder on yourself.
Yeah. And then adjusting your like expectations too. It's like just making sure that you can do something for yourself might be the goal of the day, rather than actually going out and executing a hard session, like a session that you used to be able to do before pregnancy, or like some time ago. Like the expectations, I think we all juggle with that, especially when you have older children. It's like if you didn't sleep that night before, like we said before, just lower and adjust those expectations to do something and be kind to yourself. Which leads us into number 7, be kind and don't compare. Is another tip. It's like we have a beautiful community at Her Trails, and one thing is we share stories, but we try never to compare. And during motherhood, I remember doing this, especially like Bo's my only child, so he was my first, and it's kind of like, what do? Like you have this, I don't know, all of a sudden you're comparing yourself for no reason. But be kind, know yourself and your body, and it'll take you far.
And Instagram is not a nice thing in the comparison world for coming back after babies. There's so many things we can get distracted in these days. Yeah,
not a nice thing regardless, right? You have to, I think, be really judicious about who you follow, and or even then realize it's just a small snippet of a moment in time. It's not all of the behind the scenes mess of life. So
exactly.
Move your body in whatever way feels good, and that flows on from that. The earlier one where we talked about lowering that expectation, if on a Sunday, every Sunday I have that time scheduled for my long run, but if I don't feel like doing a long run, I still go out for that time. Like Beck was saying, it's there, and I actually spend that time with my mum and we go do our long run together. We've done it every week. And sometimes it's a hike, and sometimes it's a shorter run and a coffee, and sometimes it's a longer hike or a long run if we're feeling it. So I think finding what flows, but to support you, and if that's a strength session or a mobility session or a walk with family, or it can change, that's totally okay.
Yeah. Which leads into shifting your perspective as number 9. And that could be different to like whatever program you're doing, or wherever you are in your stage of life. But for motherhood, I feel like that goes every like couple of hours. I need to shift my perspective. I find that it's like most things are a juggling act, and I need to try and just see the positives in what I can do, and do that. Do you have any tips on that one, Lizzie?
That was probably the biggest thing for me in becoming a mum, was that it forced my perspective to shift around my training. Like I was always into competitive sport, and training became a real, I'm not going to go so far to say a punishment, but it was like for weight loss, for fitness, for competitiveness. And it was always part of my life for those main reasons, I guess. So I could eat through, puberty, and it was always fluctuating. But as soon as I have kids, and to this day, I do not miss that time, because it's for me, and it's such a luxury for me to get out and spend, an hour, 2 hours moving. And I think when these other points come in and start to fall into place, and you start to take that pressure off, it becomes more around, I get to go out the door, and I get to have this window of time where my support network and my support team are stepping in to facilitate me stepping out to do this. Heck yes, like I wouldn't miss it for the world. And it's changed a lot for me in that. And I'm so thankful for that. And I think anyone who's got a busy schedule and has a lot going on, whether that's family juggles or work or night shifts, that kind of stuff, I think shifting the perspective to be able to say, I get to do this, and my body helps me do this, and my body moves for me to do this. It can be so powerful depending on where you've come from with sport or movement in the past. Yeah.
So powerful. And then you just touched on the last one, which is build your support team. So we all have people that love us, and we need them when you're taking on your new at motherhood, or you have, multiple hats that you're trying to wear. But having a support team, I don't know, just like in this Her Trails team, is you need other people to make things really succeed, and you have to ask for it. So find out, even if you write down of like who can support you, whether it's your partner or a family member, and when they can. So organize who can support you and work out what you need and tick those boxes.
And we'll share those points again, and things like building a support team we're going to go into in another one of these talks in more detail, because it ties in so nicely to like building that support team if you're doing your first ultra, for example. Like what does that look like? And I think in life it's almost paralleling that and saying, who have we got on our team that we can call on? And coming back to points 1 and 2, acknowledging that we need the help, and then actually asking for it, because people can't read our minds. And that's something I've learned. They don't know what we need unless we clearly and very simply ask for it. So I do encourage you to actually sit down with the points and make some notes and journal on it, and see, if you can find ways to build more structure into your life so you feel more supported and you can actually look after yourself so that you can continue to stay on the trails for years to come. And that's something we are really passionate about, because that will happen if we can have a team and have a life that we love, and can find those windows of opportunity to push hard or to go easy or to nourish ourselves and to eat the right food. And there's so many things to think about.
I know, but just don't overwhelm yourself. I think you come back to those and you should be good. But now that everyone's listening to this, they're starting a diary, right? They're going to know themselves a little bit more, and for sure. I think it's funny that going off that last point for support, I actually ask Bo now, because he's 5.5, and every time I leave to go for a run, he's like, "Mummy, no, really?" And I'm like, "Bo, I need your help in this. I need your help. I need to let Mummy go for a run. And if you let Mummy go for a run, we can do whatever you want afterwards." And actually, for him being 5.5, understanding that, it's such a beautiful thing when they get older, and so he supports me. He's in my support.
So cute.
Great.
Maybe you can teach him how to give you a good foot massage next. That's the kind of support mum needs.
Toddler massages are interesting, or your kid massages.
It's also really important for our kids to see us doing these things too, though. Like, I think stereotypically, we are a little bit bound by this idea that we pick up all the loose ends and we do all the caring and the we do all the drop-offs and all the lunch and all that kind of stuff, which I know is very, very old school and is very stereotypical, and it's not the way that it is in most households. I know it's not in mine. But in terms of our kids being exposed to these ideas that, their mums can also achieve things whilst they are mums, and it's not this whole idea that we put our lives completely on hold while they exist. And particularly, I mean, me being a mother of two girls, my mum did her first marathon when she was 40, and I remember it very clearly. She hadn't done any kind of real physical activity before then, and I remember thinking that she was an absolute champion. What a machine she was to do that. And so I just think it's a really good thing for us to be showing our kids anyway, as mothers, to show that you can still, you can do amazing things and be mums and wear other hats at the same time.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that's, wow, how old were you?
I would have been maybe 3 or 4 years old when she did her first marathon. And we wore shirts and we went to the sideline and we cheered and we did all that kind of stuff. And, as a kid, I never saw the juggle that she would have had. She was a nurse and trying to have 2 kids and training and all that kind of stuff, which she tells me now, she sees now what I do. And she's like, I totally can see how you're going with trying to juggle this. But I very much remember how I felt as a kid watching her do that, watching her complete it and achieve it for herself.
That's very cool.
That's so cool. And I totally agree. We do it for ourselves, but it does get passed on. Us shining and succeeding. Well, thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful day. It's nighttime over here. I think I'm going a little bit dark.
I think it's getting a bit dark.
Getting dark. I can see you need to go to bed.
Is it bedtime?
Bedtime. You got to get those hours in, Beck.
Exactly. I'm like, well, it's